Oh boy, here we go again. Another furry convention, another controversy. It's almost like these are happening every year, right? How's it going, guys? My name is Thameslink and welcome to perhaps the most spontaneous video I am ever going to make. That's right, fresh off the press for the very first time on this channel, I have a very sweet meat to bring to you all. Now, with us as a fandom being more attracted to drama than paws, maws, boobs or butts, it's inevitable that even me, being as inactive on social media as I am, this little piece of news would find its way to my timeline. So here I am making my first video of the year on it. Now, I would have thought Corey Coyote highlighting this at Eurofrance last year would have been enough to deter people and con staff from making the same mistake. But it seems cons aren't quite finished introducing odd, confusing and outright bullshit rules to incite hatred among all of us who go to them. Kind of like banning harnesses in one breath but allowing human pups to walk around the con space. But this particular strain of idiocy that's causing about as much hype as COVID-19 is at the moment comes in the form of something that's been quite a talking point in the fandom as of late. But this is the first time we've had a convention cause big enough of a stir for it to be worth talking about in a broader light, because I think this is the telltale sign of the return of something very toxic from the older days of the furry fandom, and signalling the return of an older, more elitist mindset that should have stayed buried along with ruining the magic. This is of course the rule that Nordic FuzzCon 2020 has implemented, banning the practice among the fursuiting community known as Poodling. Now, at the time of making this video, the con in question is still going on, and I want to make one thing absolutely abundantly crystal clear to any con staff or anyone in the admin community that is watching this video somehow, despite the low amount of subs that I have, that this is not a direct attack on Nordic FuzzCon or the staff that run it. I am in no way trying to dissuade anyone from attending your convention. I am merely presenting my 100% sole opinion about a rule that you have placed on your terms and conditions upon registering to become a con attendee. I can't stop people from attending your convention. I can, however, call the rule that you've implemented complete fucking bullshit. Now, for those of you who are new to the fandom or who happen to have not heard of this particular practice among the fursuiting community, I will try and explain it in as blunt and as brief a way as I possibly can. The blunt definition of poodling is the act of fursuiting, whether you're in a full suit or a partial suit, and showing skin while you are suiting. This isn't anything that is part of your suit, it's showing your bare human skin. The term gets its name, of course, from the dog of the same name, the poodle, in which their fur styles have both bare skin and fur. You can find most examples of poodling around furry conventions among partial suiters, where people who are maybe perhaps wearing t-shirts or shorts along with their fursuit pieces, whether it's their head, some hand paws, some feet paws, or a tail, or just their head. Still with me so far? Good, because this is where we get to the 6 flavors of complete bullshit. As innocuous and as pointless as a practice as it is, if you've been to furry conventions, you've probably seen this quite a bit and not paid it any mind whatsoever, and you may have even hugged some of these people because they are being the cute fluffy animals that they have designed their fursuits on. I personally couldn't give a flying fuck about showing skin in the fursuits that people have probably spent a lot of money or time either making or commissioning and having the fun that they rightly deserve in them. But the powers that be, in this case Nordic FuzzCon's admin staff and Eurofrance last year, decided to make this particular minute practice against the actual con rules. And this year, this rule has caused a massive stir on social media, following a single person being escorted by staff off the con floor and being asked to change their clothing. So yes, showing off any skin at this convention is in fact actually against the rules. It's not just frowned upon by furry elitists, it's actually written down in their terms and conditions. Now, this is in my opinion an absolutely ridiculous and ludicrous rule that harkens back to the early days of the furry fandom, when fursuits were coming into their own and we were being scrutinised quite heavily by the media, and we didn't want anybody ruining this perfect image of the fandom, which has absolutely no right to be on the fame pedestal that it has. Pundits have caused people to be so self-conscious in this fandom that even an act of showing a tiny little bit of skin or removing your fursuit head at a convention to see the human underneath has been frowned upon en masse so much that cons are now starting to make rules against that practice because of some people's delicate sensibilities. Nordic FuzzCon, I do not understand the logic behind ruining the magic, since it was made a meme all the way back in 2010. I don't know what conversations were had behind the scenes when this rule was conceptualized, following the utter disregarding of it at Eurofurence and the fallout that came from it. I don't know what you were thinking, but if I was standing in that room, I would have known that the moment this rule hit the con floor, that it was going to backfire fucking immediately. And it calls back to an age where we were far more critical of the people in this fandom, a la BLFC 2017. We're seeing even a resurgence in this kind of behaviour, but this time it's not just a bunch of elitist bastards ruining a little girl's convention time, but it also states in the rules just below this ruining the magic rule that if you are suffering from a medical condition, i.e. heat stroke, heat exhaustion, overheating, or any kind of medical emergency while you are in fursuit, it is perfectly fine to remove your head and your fursuit as soon as possible. So let's say you wanted to be good and follow the rules and not cause any problems, which most people would want to do, particularly if it's their first furry convention and they don't want to get into any trouble. Because we do have a tendency to put people who do wrong things on blast, even if what they do is minor. See my original species video for that. So while it's perfectly fine to remove your fursuit any way you like out of the headless lounge and designated marked areas, you have to wait until you're suffering from a medical emergency in order to do it. You can't show any skin until you're on the floor unconscious, being cut out of your thousands of dollar fursuit by EMTs and spending the rest of your convention in a hospital bed recovering, all because you wanted to follow a convention's rules and not regarding your health higher than that of what the con admin staff wants. But let me just make one thing clear. There is a reason that ruining the magic has become a meme. We are not Disney employees. We are under no contractual obligation to our fursuits or what we do in them. It's our property. We purchased or made these things. They are ours, and we choose what we want to do with them. Yet for some reason, NFC have decided, despite the majority of their peers not enforcing such a rule or even having any on their rule list, they've decided to break the mold and introduce this rule. And of course, it has gone spiffingly, hasn't it? Especially when we as a fandom claim to be accepting and welcoming of people. We're not really doing a good job of that, are we? And when it comes down to it, our well-being and health is going to take precedence over any rules that might be in place, especially when we're about to overheat or we're close to overheating, and we might want to remove some of our hand paws or maybe take off our head a little bit preemptively before going to the fursuit lounge, because did you know heat exhaustion actually creeps up on you? You feel great before you suddenly feel extremely faint, and in the next couple of minutes you are on the floor. If you have sweat dripping down your face and you are feeling lightheaded, that is heat exhaustion. We are going to take our health far more seriously than ruining some people's delicate sensibilities by removing a piece of our luxury carpets. Now, there are many reasons as to why a person would show skin in fursuit beyond that of choice. Maybe they can only afford their fursuit head. Maybe they can only afford a partial. Maybe they can only afford their hand paws, but not their feet paws or tail. If there's one thing that's going to alienate someone, especially in an area where we already do a pretty good job of alienating people who wear partials, that your fursuit parts are not good enough to rock with the big boys that can afford to splash out a bit more money or a bit more time wearing a full suit where there's going to be no chance of showing any skin unless you're being carted out on a stretcher. What do you expect them to do? Wear a long sleeve shirt so they get even hotter and extremely uncomfortable in fursuit? Wear gloves? Get hypertrichosis and go on My Shocking Story and make millions of dollars and spread the word of your condition? No, you're not going to do that person any favours by making them bend over backwards to be accepted in a fandom that on the surface is meant to be more accepting than the life they're already leading. And the second is, of course, health conditions. Because believe it or not everyone can wear these things. There are such things as conditions called hyperhidrosis, which causes a person to lose their body water much more faster by sweating it out, leading them, of course, to dehydrate and suffer from heat conditions much quicker than that of a normal person who doesn't have the condition. And on the other hand, you have anhydrosis, where a person is physically incapable of sweating out their body, leading them to dry out and suffer from heat stroke much, much faster. And that, of course, is going to prevent someone from wearing a giant synthetic fibre suits that do an absolutely great job of insulating heat and not regulating your body temperature in any way, shape or form. And this no poodling rule is either going to make people who suffer from those conditions either not want to wear their fursuits at all, thus ruining a very important part of the convention from them, where they go around in their suits and hug people that they were probably too anxious to hug out of suit, or they're going to say damn the torpedoes, put on all that to follow the rules, and end up passing out and being carted out on a stretcher to spend the rest of their convention time in a hospital bed. I cannot, for any discernible or logical reason, figure out why this rule is being given the attention that it does not deserve in any way, shape or form, for what really amounts to a minor portion of the fandom who just don't have the money to spend on a full fursuit being given shit because they can't afford a full suit to cover up every portion of their human skin. And the argument that it's a different country and their social norms and behaviours might be different from a country, let's say the United Kingdom or America, is probably the stupidest fucking bullshit I have ever heard in my entire life. This issue is not on the pedestal of should Muslim women wear hijabs in public. We're talking about people wearing fucking animal costumes in a hotel. This question does not bring sociology into the equation in any shape or form. This issue is not big. This issue is being blown up by people who have too much time to waste by focusing on tiny little issues like this when we're all supposed to be having fun. Ruining the magic is vague for a reason. The disturbing fact that this is the only thing I can find in the rules pertaining as to why skins shouldn't be shown in fursuit is a telltale sign that the reason this is being enforced strengthens my previous point. There is no real reason. The decision was made by the administrative staff of the convention and put out as a rule to be followed by every single person that attended their convention, regardless of how minute this issue actually is or the fallout that would have been caused in drawing attention to it, and just expecting us to just get on with it. You should know that we are the last fandom to let things like that slide, and the stain you're leaving is going to be harder to wash out than the sheets of the hotel you were hosting this at. Because the mass majority are going to agree on one thing. Past the memes, past the funny videos that are being made about it that are talking about this issue, it all comes down to one thing. You fucked up. To be honest, had this not been highlighting the issue it's highlighting, I would probably still be laughing about the circumstances of how big this has blown up, especially with all the controversies that are popping up in furry conventions nowadays. The fact you are putting so much time into enforcing and defending a trivial rule when there are far more serious behaviours that should be discouraged from furry conventions, you're only serving as the harbinger of a time where fursuit elitism was far more prominent than it is now, where unless you were a full suitor, you're not good enough to be in the fandom. That is why we still have people messaging furry conventions to this day, can they come if they don't have a fursuit? Which, if anyone has that question, of course you can. This isn't about just showing skin while wearing a fursuit. This is contributing to the alienation and ostracizing of people who are already having a pretty rough time dealing with those things in their normal lives. They don't need to be dealing with it in a fandom where they try to escape from those things and make friends. But in conclusion, even after all I've said on this subject, despite all the information I've given, despite me practically voicing my opinion in quite a heated manner throughout the whole of this video, is it going to make any difference? The answer, of course, is no. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever at all. Cons will still happen and they will still have rules to follow. This is the unfortunate reality that comes with the territory of going to furry conventions. It's whether you agree with the rules or not, you agree to those terms and conditions when you pick up your con badge at the registration table. The fact that you are entering your details and accepting that badge is your contract that you are going to follow the rules, whatever they may be, that they have put down when you gave them your money. And as bullshit as it is, that is unfortunately the law. Poodling doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the slightest how much or how little skin you show in your fursuit. It's only admin staff that have decided to make this a bigger issue by dedicating an entire paragraph to it in their fursuiting rules. And of course they have the very fortunate position of having the last word on these matters, and you unfortunately cannot do anything about it. Which means there's nothing you can do to really avoid this, but the point still remains, and it's still valid to talk about, no matter how many people are affected by this, whether it's 1, 2, 10, 50 or 1,000. This behaviour should not be on the pedestal that it's been put on. Nobody gives a shit about poodling, except this time it's not just being said by the snobby bastard full-suiters with their 5-figure fursuits. It's now being forced as rules in furry conventions. And this may not be the last convention that we see enforcing this rule. We can only hope that it doesn't happen, but it is something that I, and seemingly quite a majority of the members of the furry community, have a problem with. So I gotta ask, are you gonna tell me to put my paw back on?